Welcome to the Broadway Podcast, the musical theater history podcast where a couple of doctors sit around and talk about Broadway. I'm your co-host, Dr. Kristin Stultz Pressley, joined as always by Dr. Tracey Brent-Chessum. Tracey, we have made it to our 20th episode overall.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
Yes, this is number 20, but let me blow your mind even further. We're already at number 5 for season 2.
Oh, gosh.
Time is
we
flying. Yes, this is number 5.
This is number 5, isn't it?
It is number 5.
Y'all, I went back to work and started working again, and my brain is like, I was like, is that where we are? I didn't know that.
That's where we are. That's where we are. How about that? So tell us specifically, what is season 2, episode 5 all about?
So we're still in our Turn Up the Jukebox micromester, and today we're looking at Hell's Kitchen, the Alicia Keys musical. It premieres on Broadway in 2024. It has an out-of-town tryout just before that, but Alicia Keys, 17-time Grammy Award winner. This is her moment for musical theater. So.
And she would say that this is really like the highlight of her life. Like, this is a dream come true for her. I don't know how long she'd been dreaming specifically about Broadway.
Yeah.
I mean, she did grow up in New York, not too far from Broadway. So certainly it was something that was around. I don't know how long her sights were set on Broadway, but I do know that this particular project is one that is enormously meaningful to her. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes. But first, there's a couple of pressing issues at hand.
That are going to be about 3 weeks late.
Well, that's
so
true.
You know.
But we can still have conversations about them. We acknowledge that they are pressing when we record this, though when this episode released, they won't be quite as pressing, but still we can weigh in on these.
We can.
So tell us, Tracey, what's happening?
Thomas Schumacher is retiring. It looks like from Disney theatricals, and if you have been around for a while and listening to these episodes, you know that name, as one of the main thrusts of that particular producing company, and of Lion King specifically.
Yeah.
But that came across my playbill on social media, and I sent it directly to Kristin, who was like at a theme park, I think, at Epic.
You were at Epic. I might have been at Disney World, ironically.
Were you at Disney? What, I sent it to you? I was like, oh my gosh! So, just what a life, and what a how many stories he has. I mean, I wish him great luck, because he did an amazing thing. It's just
absolutely
those are big shoes to fill.
Yeah, he's been with Disney Theatrical Group, and it's had different names, and we alluded to this in the Lion King episode. It was Disney on Broadway, mm-hmm. Walt Disney Theatrical Group, whatever it might have been called. He's been with it for 26 of its 31 years.
Yeah.
He launched 10 shows to Broadway, including 3 of Broadway's top 15 longest running shows, mm-hmm. in The Lion King, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. So this is... I won't say it's a loss, because the man gave his entire career, so he certainly
you don't want to think about something like, it's like after a whole career, just pouring yourself into it. When they leave, you don't want to be like, oh, it's such a loss. It is.
Look at what he did.
But it's not, but look at what he did. Like,
right.
We shouldn't expect that there would be more. Like, people need to retire, y'all. Let's just go on that one. Let people retire. Let people have some rest.
Yes, that's right. And so he's 67 years old. And I think that he is ready to enjoy the fruits of his labor. And as you know, at Disney, they are training people from the inside out. And that's how Schumacher got his role, was he worked his way up through the ranks there at Disney. And now Disney Theatrical will be led by Andrew Flatt and Ann Court, who have been working with Thomas Schumacher for years. So it's in very, very good and capable hands. But it is again, as soon as I say the word loss, I start to choke on the word, because man, what more could he have done?
He certainly, I mean, forgive the more academic nature of what I'm going to say here, but it's on the brain because we've been, talking with the kids at the very beginning of every semester. We in theater history, we start talking about Aristotle and Aristotle's plan, his elements of good theater, and he always puts spectacle at the bottom. He says it has to be plot driven, and then he wants all of these things, and the least thing that you need is spectacle. And I have to give, Thomas Shoemaker is a part of this, in the fact that they have shown us that spectacle can add to the story. Yeah. Not take away from it. It can actually make it that much more real to you. And so, I think they're a good example of learning how to make spectacle work and, not distract from the actual the plot line. I think I will go out on a limb and say that Aristotle might have changed his ideas.
Yes.
If he had seen, what Mr. Schumacher did. Look at me. I don't even know this man. He's not paying me to say these things.
I'm the same. It's just the ultimate respect, because there's no denying what Disney's entree to Broadway has done. And we talked about that in the Lion King episode. Did we have a Beauty and the Beast episode? I know that's going on tour, but it didn't win the Tony, I guess, so it didn't make it last season. It'll come at some point, but there's no denying what they did, both with production and, as Tracey said, spectacle, that Disney magic that they were able to translate to the stage. But in addition to that, just with the changes that were made in the Times Square Theater District itself because of Broadway and
the amount of money they invested in it.
That's right. For, a lot of people at the time were very standoffish about that and were very frustrated.
Disney was too,
Right, of course. And I mean, it was very scandalous, but now 30 years removed from it, we see what a positive thing that was. And this is not my own idea, but it does make good sense. Really, Disney was one of the few companies that was able to bridge that gap between corporate America and the artists on Broadway and found a way that they could work together in a way that's really become the norm. I mean, if you look at Universal Pictures, who produced Wicked not long after Disney came on board in the mid-90s, we have Wicked in 2003 produced by Universal. So these relationships that, for better or for worse, are bankrolling Broadway now. In a lot of ways, we can point back to Schumacher and his leadership and the precedent set by Disney Theatrical Group in whatever its iteration may have been at that time. So it is a sad day for Broadway, but also a glad day to look back and remember what an unbelievable career. And he certainly will still be a player, I'm sure, in some way, but just not to the same extent.
Yeah, so we wish him well.
Absolutely. And there was one other hot topic that you wanted to discuss. What's that, Tracey?
So, Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club. Closing early, mostly because, it's not Brian Stokes Mitchell. No.
Billy Porter.
Billy Porter is sick and has sepsis and cannot continue. Right. So instead of getting another big name in there, they've decided to shut it down. I think what's interesting about this one, and we don't usually traffic in the backwoods of Broadway. That's the way we like to kind of put it. Yeah. And we try not to do that, but this is, I think, an interesting moment that you may kind of hear about is just the production company itself is being sued by one of the investors, one of the minor investors, not a major investor, for a lack of transparency in their books, wondering kind of because they're closing at a loss.
Yeah.
So they're not repaying their investors their money, and that is. It's always hard when that happens. You never want that to happen. But as Mel Brooks has taught us, you can make more money with a flop than with a hit.
Right.
We have an entire musical about this.
Right.
I've always just been thrown as a person sitting over here. Why in the world would you invest in a musical? I would never do that in a million years.
Right.
Because I'm like, I study these things and I'm like, No.
Tracy, it's so funny you should say that.
You just don't know what's going to happen. Even if it's the best musical in the world, it could flop. And you have no idea.
You know, you're so right. And it started, my dad got the opportunity to be a micro. Now, when I say micro investor, I mean a couple $1,000s. These are not big numbers, but we see this happening a lot, like you're saying. And he got the chance to be a micro investor in a musical, and he asked me about it. It was 2008-ish, and he gave me the whole business plan, and I was like, I would, no way, absolutely not would I do this. And it ended up being a pretty big hit.
Oh,
it
no.
was the revival of West Side Story. But I had said, no. And after that, I said, please quit coming to me for business advice. I'm a theater historian. But my take was exactly like yours. Like, why would you do this? Stay out of producing.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it because to us, it looks like the lotto. Right? I guess to someone with more business sense, which I guess I don't have.
I do not have.
When I give to music, don't hear that I give to musicals. I've given a lot to new musicals, quite a bit of money, out of my own paycheck to that.
Yes.
But I never expect to get it back.
No.
So when you're looking at this as a business venture, I think this particular lawsuit is pretty interesting because it's kind of uncovering how they go about raising money and making it look like a good investment.
Right.
I said that out loud.
Right.
But I'm just interested to see how this works. It just goes back to this old adage, and we keep talking about this, is that they're not the audiences. Audience ticket prices don't pay for this.
Right.
And, they don't make enough. I mean, Cabaret's been on Broadway for a long time. It says it's made $90 million. So if it's made $90 million and it was only, $26 million to produce up front.
That's crazy. That is still a crazy number.
It's still a crazy number, but then why aren't investors getting paid back?
Right.
We don't understand the economics of what it takes to keep something running. It's like
absolutely.
this is the amount of money it costs to get to opening night. And then from there, to keep everybody employed, it's going to take, millions and millions and millions. We rail about ticket prices, and we should. They're too high, but they're so high that you can't keep, you keep people out of the theater because of them. But my goodness, we can't even get our investors their money back for the initial just to try to keep it open. The business model is starting to fail, and I think that's something we have to really start looking at, because do we want these to be around,
right,
or not? We have to decide as a society whether we think art is valuable. And I don't want them to do it right now because I'm afraid of what they would say.
Right. Well, and what I would add to that is that, it was making initially about $2 million a week. Cabaret was. Yeah. And that's when it was considered a pretty big hit. In recent weeks, it's gone down to about $500,000 a week, a little bit more than $500,000 a week. So that deeply cuts into your operating costs for sure. So that's one thing, but just by contrast, I love to kind of put these things in context. So if we're looking at this show has made $90 million and is still not recouping the investments of it.
They're still not able to pay their investment back. Yeah.
By contrast, South Pacific in 1949, Oscar Hammerstein gave checks out opening night.
Yeah.
Because the costs were so much lower that they'd already recovered so much of those operating or so much of their production costs.
Just for ticket sales.
In the advance. And so he was literally handing out checks on opening night. That is unheard of. Yeah. That could not happen with the model as it is now.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say about Cabaret in particular is I wonder too, do audiences have cabaret fatigue? Because it feels like there is a new production of cabaret on Broadway constantly. Now, let me quantify that. It premiered on Broadway 1966, directed by Harold Prince. One of, not the first, but one of the first shows he directed.
Yeah.
Then we don't have a revival until 20 years later, 1987, also directed by Prince. It runs for about a year, not even quite that, maybe 8 months, about 230 performances. Yeah.
But then think about what's happening at the end of the 70s, at the end of the 80s.
Anyway. Right. And then we get to that, iconic Sam Mendes production in 1998 with Alan Cumming and Natasha Richardson as the MC and Sally Bowles. And then that was 98. It ran for like 6 years. And then we have a return engagement of that same production in 2014. And then now we've got another production that's completely different, directed by Rebecca Frecknell, whose work I'm completely unfamiliar with. I don't know if her doing anything else on Broadway, so she must be coming from London. I know
she's coming from London. Yeah. So this is a production out of London that hasn't had I think as many revivals, and it did it fabulously in London. Like, I mean, just
swept the Olivier Awards.
But I mean, I think it's still running.
I think it is too. I think it is too.
I had a former student or student adjacent, I can't remember if I had him in class, who played the MC in London. And, and just, had the right theater for it in the right moment, and everything just was working together so beautifully. But then it came here, and that's an interesting moment that we look at, maybe having the fatigue of it. But if you know anything about cabaret, we haven't done anything on cabaret, have we?
No.
I know that we talked about it in kind of like the overall history episodes, but I mean, it speaks out against fascism.
Right.
That's what it is. It's about, the rise of the Nazis during that time. So anytime anyone in American politics gets too big for their britches, think about the end of the 80s and the end of the 90s. Anytime anybody thinks that they have more power than the artist thinks they should have, we get another revival of this. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, are we just reviving, or could we be saying something a little bit more? Like, should we be writing our own stuff at this moment?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying about fatigue, but at the same time, that's a lot of revivals of one show.
Yeah, that's a lot of cabaret, and they run for a long time, so it's not like they're up.
It's a heavy show. It's not
very heavy. It's very
not
hard to
like
watch.
Sound of Music, where it's like, oh, it's so lovely. We defeated the Nazis. Everything is wonderful. Look at what standing up to them does.
Right.
Let's go run through the mountains and see.
Yeah, exactly. And each successive production of cabaret tends to go darker and darker and darker and darker.
I mean, as it should. Like, I'm not saying it shouldn't. I 100% like understand the message. Trust me.
Absolutely.
We did it at Point Park literally 2 days after the Tree of Life shooting.
Oh, wow.
Was when ours opened. It was the most intense experience I've ever had at the theater. But literally, like, theater is powerful. I tell the kids this all the time. It can be very scary in the right hands and the wrong hands.
Right. Absolutely.
So, I feel bad about it, because I think that, cabaret is a necessary wake-up call for society. But I wonder if too many people are like just not listening anymore.
Well,
and maybe that's it too.
You get numb to it because you've seen it so much, it's been around, I wonder, as I was looking into it and thinking through it, I'm like, it just feels like cabaret fatigue. I just feel like there is constantly a new cabaret. And I can definitely, I understand the timing. I get all that, but I still just think, like you said, maybe we need to make the same point in a different way. Maybe we need to write
Well,
something new, or even I was my theater history class just read Antigone,
yeah.
right?
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
there's a lot of that same stuff there with Creon and those ideas, so like maybe let's do Antigone. Let's do something different.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, this is our go-to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree with
I'm
that.
I'm starting to, it's like trying to kind of think through it because it's like I love cabaret. It's so poignant. It's so, and I mean this particular production, I really really loved what they were doing with it. It's just that, why isn't it more? Yeah, people just aren't going.
Yeah,
And it has big names in it. They've been keeping big names in it,
they
which is one of the
have.
reasons why they probably are not recouping costs. They're having to keep a big name in it to keep people coming, and you have to start
Yeah.
asking yourself, now, wait a minute, what's happening here? We can't just have this discussion without talking about what's happening in our country, just this idea that it's like, okay, there's a lot of talk in our country back and forth about fascism versus not fascism, what's happening, what's not happening. Like, I think that, plays into it as well. But as a historian, I'm going to have a much clearer viewpoint in a year or two
Right.
than I am
Or
at this
10.
very moment. I mean, in a year, I'm going to have a much clearer view in a 1 year. I'm going to have, it's going to be much better 10 years out,
Yes,
20 years
yes.
out. Rest be like, oh, we know exactly what was happening
Yeah,
at the
here's
moment.
why.
But it
Why.
does
Yeah.
feel kind of muddy in the moment.
Yeah.
So there you go. History in action.
Yeah. And these are, this is a valuable conversation, I think, for anybody who is a student of theater history or anyone who is interested in how a historian works. These are the conversations that we have. Like, we try to put things in the context of history, and then we try to make, educated assumptions, guesses about future patterns, right? And so it's an interesting conversation to have. Cabaret is very hard for me to watch. I mean, for anybody, it's very difficult.
It's very difficult. Well, it indicts
And
the audience. If
it
it's done right,
absolutely does.
you
Yeah.
should leave there feeling indicted for
Yes.
non-action.
Yes.
It's one of the things, I mean, it's the same way I feel about Kander and, it's Kander and Ebb, right?
Yes, it is.
It's Kander and Ebb's one about minstrelsy.
Is that
Scottsboro Boys.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like at the end of Scottsboro Boys, I can't, while everyone is celebrating and, these excellent performers that are bowing, but have now blacked up into blackface. I can't do that.
Right.
Not because I was like, wait a minute, I know what that means. I know what you're trying to do, Kander and Ebb. You have one trick.
Yes.
And you do it well.
Yes.
But you're trying to get me to stop thinking, and I will not do that. And it's very, very difficult. It's difficult and necessary, but it is not something our society values necessarily.
Right.
Where we do not like being nailed to the wall.
Well, and you know what, Tracy, maybe what you just said kind of talked us into a revelation, because maybe we have moved into an escapist period of theater.
Yeah.
And that's why cabaret is not selling out anymore.
Well, I mean, you look at the 60s. Like, so much of it was escapist, except for the things that rise to the top are the things that are protest in nature. Things like cabaret, things like Hair, of all things. But everything else was just fluff,
Yeah, I don't want to let Jerry Herman hear you say that.
I'm sorry, Jerry Herman.
He'll have words for you.
I'm sure he and I have never seen eye to eye. So...
But I do wonder, we talked about with Mamma Mia the need for escapism post 2000 or September 11th, 2001. And, I wonder if we've returned to that somewhat. Who knows? I don't know.
We're going to see. We're going to see where this goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
I wonder.
But it's fun. This is why we teach the kids. We look at, patterns in history and what do people do, because as I tell the kids all the time, History changes because society changes, the conditions change, the technology changes, the money changes. The
Yeah.
people don't change.
No.
How they react to
No.
things does not change. We don't
No.
learn very well. So
No, we do not. We have very short memories.
yeah.
Um, all right.
Anyway,
Conversations.
that's our conversation for
That's our
today.
conversation for today.
It is not our conversation for today because we do need to talk about Hell's Kitchen.
We do.
Which
That's why we're
is
here.
Downright uplifting compared to our
Indeed.
friend Cabaret. So,
Yes,
even
it is. It is. So, without further ado, I'm going to dive into Hell's Kitchen. 30 minutes later,
Yeah.
I want to talk about Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen is a jukebox musical, but as we've talked about in previous episodes, they can go one of two ways. You can have a fantastical fiction story like Mamma Mia, or you can have a biomusical like Neil Diamond, or like Beautiful Noise that we just discussed, or Jersey Boys is the most famous of those. So that, Jersey Boys is kind of the iconic example of that, but it launched 1,000 others like it. And Hell's Kitchen actually walks the tightrope between both of those.
Which is cool.
It's a
little
cool.
It's a little different. It's trying something a
Yes.
little different, and I love that.
And not only does it walk the tightrope between being semi-autobiographical, but also having a pretty large fictional component to it. But also, there are 4 original songs written
Yeah.
for this musical. So
By
and that's
Alicia
a big
Keys,
number,
not
right?
by someone else. Like,
Right.
she was a huge part of the creation of this, and
Massive. In fact, I'll get back to that in a minute. But yeah, and that's unusual. We've seen maybe one new song written for a show. I think MJ has one original song. I think On Your Feet, the Gloria Estefan musical, has one original, but to have 4 original songs, that's significantly more than any other that I can think of. So it's different. It's kind of its own beast in that regard, which is very cool. I'm not going to talk too much about Alicia Keys because I feel like anybody who has been paying attention to music is probably pretty familiar with her, but I'll go over her life in broad strokes. She was born in 1981 and she grew up in New York City, specifically in Hell's Kitchen. And that's one of the reasons why, that's one of those semi-autobiographical components. She wanted to set this in her home sweet home. And so that was an intentional choice that she made. Interestingly, when she was about 5 years old, this was before she even started playing piano, she guest starred on an episode of The Cosby Show as Rudy Huxtable's buddy. Now, I am quite certain that as a child of the 80s, I have seen every episode of The
Yes.
Cosby Show. And
True.
now I'm going to have to go back and
Thursdays
find...
at 8:00.
That's right. Thursdays at 8 o'clock.
We were allowed to stay up and watch it. It was
The
cool.
original must-see TV, right? I'm going to have to go back and find that episode. She listed in her bio as 1985, but she would have been 4 years old then. So I'm wondering if maybe her dates might be off. But I don't know. I'm going to look. I'm going to find it. And then she starts playing around with the piano at age 7. And of course, we all know where that led to. So she starts playing piano at age 7. By age 12, she's writing her own music. She got a record deal less than 10 years later. At age 15, she has her own record deal. And then at age 21, she has her first #1 hit with that unbelievable song Fallen that we're probably all familiar with. In fact, that song Fallen, which hit #1 in 2001 or 2002 rather, I think 2001, maybe 2001. One of the That song won,
I can't help you on that one.
won 5 Grammy Awards, including Song of the Year and Best New Artist. So immediately, Alicia Keys, there was no, trial and error for her. As soon as she started releasing music, she was getting noticed for it. And that just continued as she had other songs like Girl on Fire, which has become an iconic anthem, Empire State of Mind, which Lin-Manuel Miranda sampled at one of the early showcases of what was then called the Hamilton mixtape. He sampled Empire State of Mind. So just iconic songs that are used on commercials, that are used, anywhere you turn, you hear her songs. All told, she's won 17 Grammy Awards, including Best Musical Theater Album for Hell's Kitchen, and she's gotten 32 nominations. So an incredibly decorated, enormously successful artist who had done all of these things in music by the time she was 30 years old. In fact, started at 20. The reason I say 30 years old is because when she was 30, she got the chance to not only produce, but also write incidental music for a play called Stick Fly that was on Broadway in 2011, written by Lydia R. Diamond. Now, that season, 2011, was noteworthy for a number of reasons. Also on Broadway that same season was a play called The Mountaintop by Katori Hall. Katori Hall is a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright who also wrote the libretto for Tina, the Tina Turner musical, which we will get to here in pretty short order, and we'll talk more about Katori Hall then. So we had The Mountaintop by Katori Hall, Stick Fly by Lydia R. Diamond, and then we had Susan Laurie Parks's revisions to the Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, directed by Diane Paulus, which was beautiful. Starred Audra McDonald and Norm Lewis as Porgy and Bess.
That was amazing.
And so, yeah, incredible, absolutely incredible show. And Susan Laurie Parks did revisions to that book. So at that point, we had 3 Black women playwrights represented on Broadway in that season, which is noteworthy. Kenny Leon, who, when I was living and working in Atlanta, was the artistic director of the Alliance Theater, and subsequently...
he still works
around,
with them quite a bit. He's still around.
Yeah, and has subsequently done a lot of work on Broadway, directed both The Mountaintop by Katori Hall and Stick Fly by Lydia R. Diamond. And he made the comment, I can't remember a season when there have been 3 plays by women, much less 3 plays by Black women. So it was an enormously important banner year. And being surrounded by that kind of storytelling is what really inspired Alicia Keys to write her own story. She was like, I want to add to this canon, right? I want to be a part of this. And so that's when the idea for Hell's Kitchen, what would become Hell's Kitchen, starts percolating. So she starts working on it. Early on, she decides that she does, it's a semi-autobiographical thing. She would say it's not a, story by story, point by point retelling of my life, but it is based on her experiences. And it's not based on her experiences at large. It's based on her experiences as a 17-year-old teenager.
Yeah.
Growing up in Hell's Kitchen in the 1990s. Now, that time period, 1990s, is really important. They went to great lengths. The choreographer, the designers went to great lengths to really drive home 90s New York culture in every way that they could implement it in the show. It's really, really important. Now, this is interesting. Tracey and I were talking before we started recording about other shows that attempt to tell, not the whole timeline of someone's life, like you see in Jersey Boys, it's their whole career, or Carole King, Beautiful, their whole career. The only other one that I could think of was MJ, which attempts to tell the story of 3 days in the summer of 1992 when Michael Jackson is rehearsing for the Dangerous World Tour. So we get just that little sliver of his life. And she's doing the same thing. If you watch her be interviewed about this show, she is so emphatic that it is Allie, which is the main character. It's Allie's 17th year. That's just very interesting to me. Why she would choose such a narrow sliver. Why that year? Why not 18? That is a very specific choice to set it before she's officially an adult. She's, I just think that's an interesting choice. Tracey, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's funny. It's like she's not trying to say it's not autobiographical, but it's veering away from her life very, very quickly, right?
Right.
And so trying to... It's unfair to call it, I think, autobiographical because she is so emphatic about the fact that it is and it's not. It's
Right.
this is a character, and we have, and that happens all the time in these musicals. Like we have to
Yeah.
kind of invent something to make this work,
Yes,
for the
absolutely.
drama of it to work. That sometimes is not, that big of a deal. But we overplay it for the sake of the drama.
Yeah,
We
of
do that all the
course.
time.
Yeah.
But she is. I mean, they're purposely making her older than Alicia Keys was when she got her, first record deal.
That's right.
So
15.
you're
She
still
was 15 when
putting
she got that.
her, yeah, you're still putting her in a position where she can say, yeah, this doesn't have to do with my life. So there does seem
Yeah.
to be,
A
and
distancing. Yeah.
that's something that I, have read in a lot of people who've seen it, talked to people, but also kind of read some of the reviews, is just this distance, trying to kind of find the distance between, or bridge the distance between Allie and Alicia Keys, because it's like she's obviously there, but this is not necessarily her life.
Right.
But
Right.
it
And,
is, but it's
and
not.
right.
you know?
Right. Yeah. But you need the distance to be able to comment on things. You need the distance to take some artistic license so that it doesn't. I would imagine it would be very difficult if you're trying to create, a scene by scene recreation of your life. That would be enormously personal and very difficult.
Yeah.
So maybe this little bit of distance is what gave her the creative freedom to play around with the story.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I this is something I've been wondering, but I couldn't find any real information on it. But this idea of Nuck,
Yeah.
the boyfriend who's in his 20s,
Yeah.
that Allie is kind of going after, and it gets Nuck in trouble, it gets Allie in trouble, it gets everybody in trouble. Is like, is that because they don't really explore that relationship, and perhaps it's the age gap of that relationship,
Yes.
like, they don't really explore that. It's more as it seems to be more as kind of a foil for this plot of mother and daughter, kind of back and forth. And I think that's telling, in the fact that it's like, we're not going deeper into the things that most people would be like, ooh,
Yeah.
that is, and it's like, is that because it's invented, or is that because she was like, don't touch that?
Right.
We don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know in 1990, when was it? If she was born in '01, it would be 98 ish. So mid to late 90s when this is set. I think the reaction to a 17-year-old dating someone in their early 20s would be very different than it would be now, right?
Yes,
Very
totally
different.
different.
Yeah.
But yet her mom completely reacts as we would now, calls the
Right.
police,
Yeah.
like, and freaks out, and sets the police on this boy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes.
so it seems more like a foil
Yeah.
than,
Absolutely. Well, so she kind of comes up with this idea, decides she wants to do it. She wants to be a part of Broadway. She's so inspired by these other writers like Tori Hall and Lydia R. Diamond and Susan Laurie Parks. And she wants to add her name to that list. And so she, thinks around on it, goes as far with it as she knows how to go. I mean, she's a songwriter. She's not a playwright. And so she connects with an actual playwright, Christopher Diaz, and she brings him on very early in the process. And I don't know this, I've not read this, I've not heard this, but it makes sense that Diaz was appealing to her as a librettist because he was Pulitzer Prize nominated. He'd won Obie Awards. He knew his way around writing a play, but also in 2010, so just a year before she started working on the idea for what would become Hell's Kitchen, he had written and produced a play called Welcome to Arroyos, which is about a Latinx family that grew up on the Lower East Side. It's narrated by a DJ. It uses hip hop music and the spoken word. There's a lot of overlap between what she envisioned for her show and even the thematic content of it's so anchored in New York. talking about this specific time and place. She's looking at the 90s in Hell's Kitchen, but there's a lot of overlap between what they were doing, a lot of overlap between how they would see the world, how the world would sound to them. And so they meet, and immediately she's like, he gets it. He's the guy. He gets what I want to do. He sees it. And so the two of them work on it together. They say as long as we could do it, as long as they could work on their own, they did. And by 2018, so they worked for several years. By 2018, they decide we have taken this as far as we can take it. We need to bring in a director. Mm-hmm. And so they went for the best. If you're a 17-time Tony or Grammy Award winner, you can probably hire whomever you want to hire to direct your bio musical or semi-bio musical, semi-autobiographical musical. And they hire Michael Greif, who was director of Rent, director of Next to Normal, director of Dear Evan Hansen, director of The Notebook, and others. He'd won Obie Awards and Tony Awards. He had been the artistic director of the La Jolla Playhouse, which is a major pipeline to Broadway, and particularly was at the time that he was there. So they go right for, one of the tops in terms of Broadway direction. And of course, he is on board right away. And so they get to work in 2018. And they still work together for a while. I mean, it was a while before it was ready to premiere. It premiered at the public in 2023. So that's still, a healthy time. Now, granted, there was a pandemic in there, which I'm sure impacted the timeline somewhat, but it's not like they were ready to go and then the pandemic stopped it. I mean, they still had work to be done.
Yeah. A lot of people just were like, and we're going to hit the pause button.
Yeah.
Because we're going to wait until this recovers. And this is one of those musicals that really does that and does it pretty successfully. Yeah. It waits till, Broadway had been open for a couple years before it even, having spent all of this time, what's the rush?
Right. Absolutely.
And she's only in her 40s. So it's like, we got time, Right.
And, also during this time in 2022, she published a novel, a young adult novel. So she can do it all. I'm telling you. She does not, she does not let the grass grow under her feet. She finds a project and she gets it done. So she was definitely busy writing her book. And that may have been her pandemic baby. I'm not sure when that started, but it came out in 2022. So, work was ongoing. Some of the work that was done was they were doing significant revisions to some of Keys's songs, by which I mean all new orchestrations, ways that you would never have heard them before. And in fact, I heard her say, I wondered why I didn't ever think to do this song this way before, because I love it this way, right? Yeah. So they were doing, mashups, absolutely, new orchestrations. She worked very closely with an arranger named Adam Blackstone, Tom Kitt, Pulitzer Prize winning composer of Next to Normal, did some of the orchestrations for it. So she had a really hefty musical team working with her to do some very creative arrangements. Now, I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah. Because honestly...
Go ahead.
No, it's just, I was looking at that and I was like, I mean, good for her. She realizes that that Broadway hasn't been her primary business.
That's right.
And knows, I want this to go. I mean, she already is very involved, which not a lot of composers are, because it's their babies. You don't want...
Yes.
Having people talk about your babies is very difficult.
Of course.
It's difficult for everybody.
Yes.
But actually, being able to step back and allow that process to happen, even if, so many people would just walk away and just get frustrated and walk away. And it seems like they really did the work to kind of keep it all together. Anyway.
Yeah. In fact, she talked about how, she was very outspoken about the fact that there was not one line, not one musical note, nothing went on stage that she did not have a hand in. And that is very different from a lot of these jukebox musicals, you think Mamma Mia, um, Bjorn and Benny and Bjorn, the two B's, the songwriters, they were like, we don't have time for this. Judy Kramer, the producer, go get it done, and then we'll see you later. And so they, for much of the process,
care about the
they were not involved. Right.
Yeah.
They were not
they got
a huge part of the nitty gritty. Now they got there eventually.
They got their they are very sticky about the sound of it.
Yes,
and
of
that's
course.
what they care. But that's what they care about.
That's right. That's right. So, but we're going to come back to that. I'm glad you said that. My point being, a lot of creators step aside. Carole King's a great example with Beautiful. She wanted nothing to do with that. In fact, she didn't even want it to happen.
She didn't even want to see it for weeks.
No,
she didn't come.
No, she did not come in.
Didn't she come
3 months later?
Like
3 months.
Unannounced, didn't tell anybody,
kind
of sat in a wig, like in the back.
She had on a wig and a trench coat. She did. And the cast didn't know. Only a producer and her daughter knew that she was coming. So it's just a very different, very different. But Alicia Keys was the exact opposite. She was involved in every note and every jot, every tittle. She was there on every single piece of it. And you mentioned the sound. And the reason I wanted to come back to that was because that's kind of going back to what I was saying. It's unusual that they messed with the orchestration so much, because now it's very difficult to say if you want to have a successful jukebox musical, do these things. But one of the things that seems to be a hallmark of the most successful jukebox musicals, of course, Hell's Kitchen is now an outlier on this rule, is that the songs need to sound like they sound on the album, right? Don't get fancy with your songs. So that's why Jersey Boys, it sounds like you're listening to a Four Seasons album. Yeah. Mamma Mia, because of Benny and Bjorn, it sounds like you are listening to an ABBA album. And that seems to be, it's when you play around with the sound that people are like, that's not the song I know. I don't recognize that one. It's when you start playing around with the sound that you tend to lose the power of a recognizable catalog, because people don't recognize it. But Alicia Keys was somehow able to make that work because they did some significant revisions to her music. She, again, working with Adam Blackstone and Tom Kitt, and it works. I mean, the show's been running and selling well for a year and a half on Broadway. So one of the things that they did, and this is something that we've seen and we'll talk about when we talk about Six, where each of the queens in, Henry VIII's ex-wives, they're each done in the style of a different pop diva. Each character in Hell's Kitchen, or each of the primary characters in Hell's Kitchen, is styled on some iconic recording artist. So for instance, Jersey, the mother played by Shoshana Bean originally, is Tina Marie. She's styled on the pop star Tina Marie. Miss Liza Jane is modeled on Nina Simone. So if you know Nina Simone's music, you can hear that in Liza Jane's music. Davis, originally played by Brandon Victor Dixon, he is Sammy Davis Jr. So that's why you hear those very different orchestrations that sound like Sammy Davis Jr. and not like Alicia Keys. And then those three girls, Allie and her pals, they're like In Vogue meets TLC. So those 90s, late 80s, early 90s girl groups, girl power, all of those things, that's what she's pushing with those orchestrations. So it's very, very different. Like I said, somehow she was able to make it work, and other people have not been able to make that work. That what was one of the frustrations. We've talked about Jimmy Buffett's Escape to Margaritaville and how it failed. And one of the thoughts was the music was different, right? Yeah. It didn't sound like those albums. It didn't sound like songs you know by heart. And the successful ones, it sounds like the albums. So somehow she was able to make it work. And I think that's speaks to her skill, and also the fact that she brought in other creators, Blackstone and Kit, and she were able to hammer out these different orchestrations and made it work.
And I mean, she says, doesn't she say, like, has a major pain in the ass? Like,
she does say.
She's like, I just, you can see it, and you can see all these people in the room. She
does. She said it. She said, I was a major pain in the ass, meaning I was constantly needling everybody to get things exactly how I want it.
Mm-hmm.
And she
But
said,
but
to
it's
be
obvious
exact, the
that some
pain in the
people.
assness was through the roof.
Oh yeah,
She was very self-aware, but if you're Alicia Keys, you can do that and get
yeah.
away with it.
But it
And
sounds like
it,
she also listened
yes, without a
because
doubt.
they're doing. It's like, I'm going to be a big pain in the ass about this, but I'm also going to.
It's going to be right.
Yeah, we're gonna make it actually work.
Yep,
And I think that
exactly.
I think you're touching on the thing that makes this particular show different and brilliant. Not just because it's a good show, but it is well crafted, and it
Yeah.
is crafted so differently that it really, I think we're going to look at it in the future as something that starts to push the genre forward.
Yeah.
Because it does straddle that line and isn't classically in one frame or the other.
Exactly.
And it is funny how many you read lots and lots. If you're like me, you're reading lots and lots of critical reviews of this and getting different. Because one of my things, and if you've been around a while, you know this. It's like I love to see how different regions,
Right.
interact with it. But it's funny to listen to critics about like craftsmanship and structure and things like that, and them going, I don't know, it works.
Yeah.
I still think it has an act 2 problem. But it works
Yeah.
I'm just not like, there's a lot of people that are like, I don't really know why it works as well as it does, but it does.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it should work, but it does. And whenever you have people kind of scratching their heads, I think that's always a time where I start paying attention and I start listening, and I'm like, this is really, really interesting. And how did we change something so much that literally people are like, this shouldn't work, but gosh, it does.
It does. Yeah.
That tells us that we've hit on something new, and we're playing with this. I was telling Kristin before we even jumped on to the recording, was that I always know I'm going to like something. Sometimes when you're reading lots and lots of listening to lots of different albums, some of the times you can totally feel the through line of the show by listening to just the CD. You don't need the rest of the stuff in the middle. It's like, oh, okay, I get what this musical is about.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, every Jukebox musical, it's like,
Right.
I have no idea what's happening here.
Right.
But this one I did. This one I was like, oh my gosh, there's a story here. And I can hear it and I can feel it and I can, like, it's all there. I'm tracking with what you're doing here. So I was like, that was my first introduction to Hell's Kitchen. And I went, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely doing something different. It is an outlier. And I think you're right to say it opens the doors for messing with the jukebox musical form in ways that I can't think. Maybe other shows have tried, but they failed. And so that's why we're not having this conversation about them. But Hell's Kitchen tried and has succeeded.
Works.
Yeah. So after all of that work, they premiere at the Public Theater, home of most recently Hamilton, but also A Chorus Line and Hair. So it's just another in that grand tradition of great Broadway transfers that start at the Public.
And it's not very far away from Broadway.
Right.
Like, if you go there and everything, I always stop off at the Public, and it's very good. But in today's world, it is a risk. You have to know this is going to work to premiere it at the Public, because if it doesn't work at the Public on night 1, you're not going to Broadway.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, which is why so many people do their out of town tryouts far away, because they know they still need work.
Right.
They were apparently pretty confident on this one.
I think that was the goal from the very beginning, was Broadway. And then the fact that the Public was willing to launch it was, a necessary evil probably, but it also gave it a lot of street cred, because you put the Public label on anything and it is meaningful. But this is notable because, again, this is the theater that has launched Hair and A Chorus Line and Hamilton. And this was the biggest show, had the biggest budget of any show ever produced at the Public Theater.
Yeah.
So they really believed in it. I'm sure that they had capital from Keys herself, which certainly didn't hurt, but they really believed in it and put the money behind it. So it premieres there in October of 2023, and then it opens on Broadway 6 months later.
Yeah.
April of 2024.
This was a stop off to get the...
Yeah, it really was. It was like, well, we got to do this. Let's get the stamp of approval. And they got it. And then off they went. But I'm like you. I don't think there was ever any doubt that it was Broadway bound and that was where it would end up. Yeah. So 13 Tony nominations for this one. It won 2 for Best Leading and Best Featured Actress.
And both of which were well deserved.
Yes. Yeah. No question. No question. So there you have it. You have Hell's Kitchen.
Just started touring. So this is not something that's been on tour for a while. So you're getting the first cast from Broadway. They're all there. They're very excited. And it's, if you get to see this early, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no question. So there you go. Alicia Keys, Hell's Kitchen, semi-autobiographical, lots of new orchestrations, amazing dance, flashback to the mid-90s. You're going to love it.
And keep your eyes on it because you're going to hear its name in about 10 years when we talk about the structure of...
That's right. When the Jukebox musical began to pivot, we'll look back to Hell's Kitchen and say, I believe it was Hell's Kitchen that opened.
There we go.
Yep, that's right. But
you heard it here first, y'all.
Exactly. Put a pin in Hell's Kitchen. That's right. So on that note, that'll do it for this episode of the Dr. Broadway podcast. Tune in next time when we'll be talking about MJ, the musical, one of my favorites, which opened on Broadway in 2022. Until then, you can connect with us via email at hello@drbroadway.com or on Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok at Dr. Bway Podcast.